Hey guys, what we're working on here is a 1940 Ford two-door hardtop. The side windows, there's no post, so it's open. When you roll the glass down, it's nice and wide open sides. The project that we're working on today is to provide a mounting for the hinges for the trunk. Normally they would have provision on the underside of the body, and the hinge would clip onto that. Then the trunk would hook up to the hinge so that you can open and close it. In this case, I don't have anything here to mount it to, so I've been racking my brain as to how to do this so that it's solid and yet simple. And I see the rear deck is quite well reinforced, it's very solid. So I'm thinking of mounting something to the rear deck itself instead of the body. Next is to find a set of hinges. Well, digging through the rack, our supply shelf out back, I found a pair of hinges like this with a cylinder that just might do the trick. And what I'm thinking is that put them in like so. The cylinder would be tucked in out of the way behind. We have to provide some sort of mounting plate to bolt these two bolts to. So if we can come off of this solid metalwork here and mount a plate about what looks to be about 1.5 inches to 2 inches below the body skin to the surface where the hinge would bolt to, that would make it quite solid. So being a little bit lazy, I always look for something that's already made. Structural box tubing is kind of heavy. It's 1/8 wall, but really we don't need much of it. What I'm thinking is if the tubing is cut down on both sides, it provides solid legs. It's got formed structural lineal strength to it. So the thought was to cut the side legs off to the angle I need, and that way I can weld it right to that solid surface there. And we can always cut the angle off at what we need. We went ahead and we cut such a piece of box tubing. As you can see, there's not much left of it. We still have to notch out and trim the ends off and put a mounting plate on it. The mounting plate is the edge of a piece of box tubing. It provides ribs on the side. We've provided holes for the hinge, and what we're going to do is weld that right to there. The bolts will drop through there. The hinge comes up from underneath. The bolts are done up. This will be clipped off. It's clean, very, very strong, and fairly simple to do. So in effect, it'll go in like that. Besides being welded vertically on this straight edge, it has a seat that it sits on top, so it gives it some sideways strength too. Once we get this together a little bit further, we'll illustrate how that's going to work. I've got the one tacked together. It's not totally finished. It has to be taken off and welded solid. But as I was describing, these pieces had to be notched out so that they would sit on that shelf. So we've done that, and we've also tacked the plate to the top, as you can see here, for the hinge bracket to clip onto. So that being done, and everything's tacked in place, we went ahead and we bolted the hinge onto the bracket. And right now the hinge is in the raised up position. So this would be the angle of the trunk when it's open. And when you close it, I see the cylinder clears nicely. We're clear of the skin of the body. The surface of the trunk is down flush. So that's worked out quite nicely. Also, the actual bar is tucked in out of the way of the trunk itself. The cylinder is also tucked in behind, so it won't be bumped by anything shoved in the trunk. So that worked out quite well. Once everything is welded in solid, I think we've got a really successful hinge operation here for this particular trunk. It's not very often that we get something that will work out that nicely. Thanks for joining me on this. Take it easy.
Hey guys, right now I'm going to be working on the trunk structure of the M40C build. And as you can see, we have all the exterior rear panels mounted to each other. We formed up, stay put, we formed up a front trough, tacked it in place, installed this rear fascia just to hold and make sure that we're working to what's going to be here when the car is assembled for the final time. A few minutes ago you saw my dad working on these hinges and they came out awesome. Cylinder still on that one. I love doing that because that's just nice. This one here, I've pulled the cylinder off and we're using this nifty little prop rod to hold it up. And there you go. You see how well that's going to work. Now it's a bit floppy right now because I only have one clamp holding it for illustrative purposes. Okay. Now initially when I designed these pieces, these side pieces, I had planned for 2 sections to create one, just due to the nature of the curvature. I wasn't sure if I was able to get this much curvature in this panel. So cut out 2 fresh blanks of 20 gauge, rolled the leg, and then I started stretching it. And after a few minutes, well, we got that curvature. So with this side here, I left it for you guys. This has to be stretched. After it's stretched, then we take and roll the leg over. But before we do any stretching, we have to put this in the tipping wheel and roll this leg down. So we'll have one going down, one going up. And we'll have to work between the kick shrinker and the English wheel and stretch one leg, shrink the other leg, and keep working it until we get there. It is possible because it's been done already. And then once these pieces are formed up, we can work on the front and rear structural parts. And then once everything's kind of screwed together, we'll disassemble everything and start working on the pretty part of making the beads and whatever has to be done to make it look factory. Because right now it just looks like a piece of sheet metal. And it'll also add some strength within the panel because we don't want this flopping around. This is 20 gauge, but it still flops around. So anyway, let's get to work, form this piece up. So I mentioned last time we were having a new set of dies created for our tipping wheel. The original one I had was cast and either it was dropped or just due to the use, it finally cracked. So we had these created, one with a sharp edge, one with a nice radius. We'll be using the one with a radius today. First pass is always the most difficult because you need to get the line just right. After that, you kind of have a tractor run in and it goes a little bit easier. You probably hear that grinding noise. That's that flange running up against that metal edge. Without the edge, we won't be able to roll up the piece. Okay, now I should go backwards. They're slippery. Good. Now we're going to have to do some shrinking on that edge that we're rolling over. It's going to start to buckle very soon. Oop. Okay. So as you can see, it's starting to buckle. Now we don't have to stand this up 90 degrees. It's going to lay down a bit, but we can't have this happening. So we're going to go to the shrinker and tighten this edge up now. So this piece on your left needs to look just like this piece after we're done. We're going to start by shrinking this edge, and then we'll switch over to the English wheel and start stretching this flange. I'm feeding it about 3/4 of an inch at a time when I'm moving it through. Okay, so now we have some shrinkage going on here and a bit of curvature, but there's going to be a lot more in a few minutes. I'm starting in the middle and working my way out towards the ends because we need more curvature in the middle than at the ends. And I can't really run my fingers up too tight to the wheel. I don't want to get them pinched. So we'll turn the panel around and feed it in the other way when we go to do this end. Like I can get close, but not right up to the wheel. It hurts. And like you get an instantaneous black thumb. It's crazy. You can use the kick shrinker to do this, but my jaws aren't that deep, so this works just as well. I need to stretch all the way down into the root of the flange. Oh, my thumb. See, it's black. Now, if you just saw what I did, I just hit the lower anvil with that surface. Not to worry, we can take care of that without hitting it with a hammer. Got to ask yourself if I did that intentionally, just to create more work, or to show you how to fix it. It does create more work, but we can fix it. And I'll show you how. Okay, I think this is, it's getting there, but we're not there yet. It's not enough curvature. But we're really close. You can see how much more we have to wheel this end up. That little spot that we bumped with the wheel earlier, the lower anvil, I'm taking and clean that up. I'm going to do that by pushing it through the wheel on this plane and having the edge of that lower anvil and upper anvil come in contact and just kind of push that out. I'll show you what I mean. Okay. So I'm just going to sneak up and just pop that right out. And there you go. Nothing there. Okay, so we're just going to compare the two curves. And yeah, the flange is a bit wavy. We can clean that up in a second, but I'll show you that we are extremely close to where we need to be with the two panels. Okay, so I just got this panel up on the car, clamped it to the hinge, brought the hinge down to see the gap through here. Now you can see that we're pretty consistent coming up, and about at this point things get really tight. That just means that we don't have enough curvature to take and bring that up. So we're going to shrink this some more, stretch this leg some more, and then that should correct this space through here. The structure for the electrode build was a breeze compared to this one. I've simplified this one to some degree by just creating this piece, or the side pieces, out of one section instead of two. Initially I drew it up as two pieces, this one here to join to this one here, but as you can see we're getting really close with one piece. Flip it over. If you're just tuning in and you haven't seen previous videos, give you guys a lot of little tricks and tips in wheeling a panel up. So you pick up a few things as you go along if you watch our videos. And for those of you guys that have been watching our videos, thanks so much. I like to share the knowledge. I learned so much from my dad when he was building cars and doing custom stuff. And Just pick things up along the way. Now we're going to be creating some details through here, some beading afterwards, but I need to get the structure to sit where it needs to first. Before I fit this, I want to mention that the cylinders that we had on these trunk supports, I interchanged them with another set that were a little bit lighter, so we didn't have as much lifting force while we're working on this. I needed the hinges to kind of stay up in an elevated position without forcing the pieces that we're working on up into the air. Let's just check out the curvature. See, I don't have to keep clamping it every time because the hinge is falling down. And that is looking quite nice all the way through. Next step is to take and clean this flange up because I have some tracking marks there from wheeling it. And then we're going to roll about 5/8 of an inch of this leg over. Now, if there are any corrections that need to be made to this flange, we have to do it now. Because when we roll the second leg over, well, we won't be able to do any stretching or any correcting. We'll have to flatten that leg out. And then at that point, well, it opens up a whole new can of worms. Okay, the end's going to be trimmed off anyway, so I'm not too concerned about that. So let's get the softer anvil in for the tipping wheel and just roll that over. And I'd call that done. Nice straight curve. And is that an oxymoron? Straight curve? There we go. So let's go fit this up on the buck. Actually, it's not the buck anymore, right? It's the body panels themselves that we're fitting it to. In order to form up this front structural piece that connects the hinges, we're going to have to play with a few little shapes to determine what was going to work best. And a pair of duckbills and a strip of metal can be your best friend for this. Now we need to have a leg that comes in to within about 1/4 inch of that edge right here. And we need to have enough space, we can always trim it back, enough space to come back for a rubber seal that's going to connect in at this point here. So if my finger represents the rubber seal, we're within, I'd say, from this perspective, 3/16 of an inch. We come back a bit, we'll have a bit more space. Now, in terms of the height of this structure, we need to come down and pick up this leg through here. The inner leg of this structure that comes across the front needs to match with this leg here. Okay, so here's the profile for the rear structural piece that's going to connect the hinges together. And it's going to follow the curvature of this rear deck from side to side. We could have made it straight across with a very long leg in the front, but then you're kind of taking away from trunk space and it wouldn't look as nice inside the trunk. So by curving it, it's going to have a nice profile inside the trunk lid as well. There's a lot of things to consider when you're designing a structural piece for a trunk lid. You have the seal, you have the exterior lines, you have a latching mechanism later on here at the back, and then the supports for the hinges. You have to make sure that everything's strong in that aspect as well. Okay, so let's go bend this piece up. I need to get a length on this. We had 57 across, but then when we include the curvature, it's going to eat up some material. We should do something like this. And we have a length of 58. All right, so this is the front structural piece. It's been cut out and bent into the preliminary shape that we need for the trunk structure, but we can't have a straight piece across the front. And if you're looking at it, you're going to see very quickly why it's going to be so complicated to curve it around. And it's going to be this leg that we need to stretch a lot to get it to curve the panel around this way. The back one's not too bad. We've done that before. But this front 4 1/4 inch leg, that's a lot of material to stretch uniformly. But I think we can do it. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck making it out of 2 pieces. So as they say, if you don't stretch, you don't grow. So let's see if we can start stretching this out. Just want to see how close I can get it in the wheel without actually messing up my paint too much more in this area here. Just start in the middle, and already you can see, I'm not sure, maybe. I'll show you what's happening in a second. If you're looking at this leg, you can see the warpage is happening already, and we haven't really started stretching or curving anything yet. And that's going to be a problem because if we create too much material here, when we roll this over, we're going to have to shrink it a little bit. Maybe a lot, we'll see. This one here, we had to shrink a little bit when we rolled over that 5/8, 3/4 of an inch. Here, we're going to be rolling over 2 1/4 inches. So that's going to, change things a lot in terms of complexity. I'm going to actually try something here. We're going to wheel just this area through, just below the bend line that we're going to be creating in the future. And let's see what happens with the panel at that point. We might even create a small break in here afterwards. Let's play with this and see what happens. I've stepped out of my comfort zone because in the past I've made them out of 2 pieces. Now you saw me put that little clip in there, and what that does is tip my anvil just a little bit. I don't need to be stretching this as much as I need to stretch this. Perhaps I should draw a line. Okay, it's not bad. So what's going to happen, what I think is going to happen, we're going to create a lot of tracking marks. But, well, that's a good thing already. This edge here has just tightened up, and we're starting to get curvature here. It's really important to watch what's happening to your panel, or whatever you're doing, because then you can correct the mistake. Yeah, I just took some paint off my wheel. Okay, we're getting a lot of buckling happening right now. The thing is, when we roll this over later on, we can't roll it now because we'll never get it in the wheel to stretch it. But when we roll this over, I'm thinking that this will straighten back out. Let's keep going and see how bad it gets. Oh, now it's talking to us. I might cut a groove in the wheel. Okay. There's nothing wrong welding panels together to make one piece later on, but I just like a challenge. And if it doesn't work, well, I just learned a new way of not doing something. As you can see, we are getting some curvature on this side of the panel, not so much on this side. And that's why I'm thinking we're going to have to start rolling this over, this leg here, to see what's going to happen with the buckles through here. See, now this buckle here, we're creating so much material in this area, it's actually pushing this down. And that's not good. So let us throw a line down and roll it over, roll the leg over to see what happens. If it's going to where we need it to go, we'll straighten it back out and keep wheeling. Now you guys might be laughing at this because you probably know a better way of doing something that I haven't figured out yet. But unless you play with a piece of metal and work with it for a while, well, you don't learn. So. Well, would you look at that?